Dan Perry, we're looking through the lens not only of the United States and ally, but also the divided lens in Europe, as we're just hearing now. Talk to us about the impact, what this means, whatever happens, how it's seen through Europe as we speak.
I think countries in Europe are in an interesting position because they join this club. There is a confusion in the world about what the ICC is. It's not some consensual institution that really represents the accepted wisdom about international law. It is a club of 124 countries, missing some of the key countries in the world: the US, China, India, Russia and Ukraine, Israel. None of them are part of the ICC. Of the important world powers, basically it's the Europeans. And we see now how this divides them into countries that are happy to go along with what is clearly a political maneuver, versus those who understand that this is a very, very dangerous precedent. The ICC doesn't have strong jurisdiction here. The ICC is a club of member states. Palestine is not a state, even though many would like it to be. It's not a state. There's a territorial issue. You can only prosecute events that happened on a territory of a state. Palestine has no agreed territory. The ICC judges essentially have preempted negotiations between Israel and the Palestinians and decided on what is the Palestinian sovereign territory. The ICC has never prosecuted the leaders of a democratic country, not once. The ICC generally takes a step back whenever there is a credible local judiciary. They refuse to prosecute officials in Venezuela because they claim that Venezuela has a reasonable local prosecution and local judges. And now they're going after Israel. It is ridiculous. I think it'll backfire. Clearly, this is a political move against the government. The government, as has been said in the studio, has earned the political fury that it's facing, but the ICC is not supposed to be a political arm. And when I say it's going to backfire, primarily upon the ICC. Governments don't want this degree of scrutiny from a bunch of unelected judges in Brussels. The US is probably going to double down on its antipathy towards the ICC, and I think many countries in Europe, including the ones that have criticized the court, might actually do the same. I wouldn't be terribly surprised to see countries pulling out. And I think it may not be entirely too late, because among the many ridiculous precedents that have been set here is the very fact that the prosecutor, Khan, has announced the arrest warrant request before the judges approved it. That still has to happen. In all the cases in the past where arrest warrants were issued, that it was only announced after the judges approved it. Therefore, I would actually call upon the judges to send it back and to reject the request.
One wonders how likely that is, given what is unfolding right now. The ICC prosecutor was due to visit Israel with a team in the coming weeks. This seems bizarre. How does that happen? The announcement shocked and blindsided Israel and its allies. How does this happen before the investigation is completed?
The investigation is ongoing, and it's very fuzzy what the existing investigation has found. And by the way, the investigation has been going on for years, well before October 7th. ICC investigations, and again, I hate to be negative, and I mean no disrespect, but they're a bit of a joke. The ICC has been investigating Afghanistan for 2 decades, and they have yet to discover war crimes by the Taliban. Now, when you're looking at this level of ridiculousness, I don't think it would be outrageous for Israel to not cooperate with the investigation and to not allow Khan into the country, frankly. And I wouldn't be at all surprised to see this kind of sanctions happening from the United States.
I think we are going to take a deeper look at this.
One last thing. I'm sure they wanted to hurt Netanyahu. And there's a long line of people who want to hurt Netanyahu. This will help him.
Boaz Bismuth, member of the Israeli parliament in the Likud party. Boaz, thank you so much for being here, and I'm so glad you just heard that report from my colleague Balir Sladin talking about normalization, talking about what it could mean for Israel and what might be stopping it. Tell us more.
So, first of all, thank you for inviting me. But when I'm sitting here and watching and following the news, I have the impression that, not impression, that's what I hear, that deal concerning releasing our hostages, what Israel is against. Normalization with Saudi Arabia, again, Israel is against. It's absurd, it's ridiculous. Let me tell you something about normalization with Saudi Arabia. On the contrary, I imagine, or I think, or I believe, and this is also logics and in pure common sense, that it's exactly the opposite of what media is telling us right now.
What is the plan for the day after?
Very good question. The day after. I mean, I'll answer you because this is also has become like this main question in panels. I mean, about as if we don't have a plan for the day after, and therefore, I mean, this is a not only disgrace. I mean, this is a total failure. So let's talk about the plan. As long as Hamas is there, it's very difficult to speak openly or to point in your finger which country will help you or which group will do so. When Hamas will be out of Gaza or will not be ruling in Gaza anymore, then you will be able to speak of the day after. And another thing, to all those countries in the world that tell me, or all those, how would I say, all those experts that tells me, no, it has to work, etc. You know, before being a member of parliament, I used to be a journalist myself. I covered Iraq War number 1, Iraq number 2, Kosovo, Afghanistan. I have Libya, civil war. Libya, totally forgot. Let's speak, all of us. Libya, the day after. Iraq the day after, Afghanistan the day after. What a success story. Why? Because Taliban stayed, because those tribes in Libya stayed, and Iraq, all those militias. And therefore, one must understand, you clean Gaza from all those horrific elements, which are terrorist groups, and then, believe me, you will have a day after.
I think you're wrong. The truth, basically, is not that Hamas prevents a discussion the day after, but two people who Netanyahu fears more than Hamas, I think, are preventing it, and that is Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. Because for the day after is really, really simple. It's going to have to be some version of the Palestinian Authority. That's just all there is to it. There is nothing else. Not a man from the moon and not a woman from Mars. Okay? That's what it will be, and this government can't say those words. Moreover, if you talk to U.S. officials, they will tell you MBS in Saudi Arabia has reduced the price for normalization with Israel to almost nothing. It's the Americans who are asking them to ask for something for the Palestinians in order to have it look like a reasonable edifice. Saudi Arabia wants this normalization. They want it now because they want the defense pact, and they fear that if Trump comes back to power, the Democrats in the Senate will block it. So basically, Netanyahu and this government, because they can't give lip service to a Palestinian state, and they can't even say, yes, the PA will be restored in Gaza, is preventing a peace deal with Saudi Arabia.
Boaz, I get you to have the parting words.
Thank God we found the responsible for all the diseases and dysfunction in the Middle East, which is Benjamin Netanyahu, but we're used to it. Let's answer.
This is coming from the U.S. administration, by the way.
May I answer?
Did not disturb. Benjamin Netanyahu
I'm waiting.
Will be a leader.
Tell me when I can answer without it being disturbed.
Without those extremists that are preventing any kind, that are represent the majority in these countries, leading by Benjamin Netanyahu.
You cannot find any Israeli that right now that will accept the Palestinian Authority to go into Gaza, and I'll tell you why. You mentioned before Jenin or the Palestinian Authority
it's
right now.
What
is happening over there? Aren't we going inside Jenin in order to clean it from terrorists? Can we trust them? Do you want me to talk about a survey that you had at the Palestinian Authority from Fatri Shkaki? 73% of them support 7th of October, although the consequences. Do you believe that after the 7th of October, I will trust them? You can trust them. I don't. And for the time being, I do think that what I say is much closer to the Israeli population than what you say. You speak as experts. We listen to experts for so many years. We saw exactly where we arrived.
There's another point of view, and if you talk to the Israeli security establishment,
but it can be wrong.
The Israeli security establishment will probably tell you that the PA in the West Bank, for all the difficulties and all the imperfections, fundamentally is playing a positive role.
I listen to you, but I do know that after the 7th of October, I am now taking zero risks.
You're going to be left with a military occupation.
I will take no. I do not want to occupy. What I said before, the day after, when Hamas will not be there, believe me, you will find many that will want, on the contrary, to be there in rebuilding Gaza.
That's a fabulous,
right now, I think that you live.
Notion.
No. I think that right now you live in a certain dream. And I gave you an example. You spoke about America. So if you ask about American administration or the American plans, tell me. Gentlemen? Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, is it a success story the day after? Answer me.
Well, I do agree with you that Hamas needs to be eradicated from Gaza. On that point, we can agree.
This conversation is definitely going to continue. We appreciate your insights. We appreciate your... Definitely, we appreciate your passion. It is important. Thank you so much for being here in studio.